So we move from that into the next panel discussion, the entertainment industry and auto collide. And this is going to be moderated by Hayley Ball, who is the director for 3Vision, and she will introduce her panelists. So, Hayley?
Thank you, thank you. From audio to video, it was almost like this session this afternoon was planned. Good afternoon, my name is Hayley Bull and I'm director of 3Vision. 3Vision is a specialist content consultancy. We launch and manage video services globally, specialising in the rights, licensing and negotiation. I'm delighted to be looking after this session this afternoon. We have a superb lineup of entertainment and automotive specialists, really lucky. And I believe it's the first ever session at this event which addresses entertainment. The video industry and the automotive industry is undergoing a huge period of significant change, but they're united by connectivity. Users wanting to consume content on demand, across devices, and seamlessly integrated. And we're going to understand this afternoon what that means as those two industries come together. So I'd like to welcome the panelists up to stage. Great. And to save time, I'm going to get the panelists to introduce themselves and a little bit about their company when they first respond to some of the questions. So, welcome everybody. Scott, I know that you were very vocal in getting entertainment brought to the agenda this time at TU. Why is that, and why is now such an important time to address this, and how do you at Ford see these two worlds coming together?
Well, thank you for the question. Yes, I was definitely having the conversation about, I think, well, this is definitely one of those topics that is really important, I think, for our customers, but is not necessarily discussed in forums like this. I come from the background of I started my career in entertainment and working at MTV, and you know, the road from MTV to Ford is always an amusing one. But I always think about how do we deliver content in vehicles, because ultimately, you think about it, at home, everything is on demand for me. I watch Amazon Prime, I watch Netflix or Mubi, or I listen to Spotify. But when you get in the vehicle, of course, you've got to use your smartphone to interact with a lot of those experiences. And as we move forward, content and really smart content, meaning I want it pushed to me, I want suggestions made for me, I want to take advantage of content during the amount of time that I have while I'm commuting, for example. Yeah. That is something that we as an industry can deliver because we actually know a lot about what's happening with the driver. But what's not happening is, I think, some of the conversations around how do we standardize some of this stuff to bring it into the vehicle. Content companies, and I've recently been making a bit of a tour around Europe to actually meet with content companies and media companies to actually sit there, explain to them under NDA, what are we doing? What does our next generation platform look like? When is it coming? What are the opportunities for them? And to get them to start thinking about what content properties they have and how that can be sliced and diced to deliver perhaps to even a new customer. Yeah. And so the feedback that I've gotten from some of the media companies, and some very big ones, have said, well, it's great that we're having this conversation because we've not met with any other automaker yet.
Yeah, and we can ask some of them today. I mean, MTV are in the house. ProSieben, a huge household brand in Germany. You're used to delivering content across lots of distribution platforms. How do you see in-car and the opportunity for your content?
First of all, thanks for having me here, and good afternoon to everybody. I work with ProSiebenSat.1 in the distribution department, and what I do in my day-to-day job is delivering our programs, our 7 free TV programs and pay TV programs, to the end customer. And we do that today via satellite networks, via cable networks. We are partnering with the guys of Deutsche Telekom for very long and in a good partnership to bring our content, our stations to the end customer via IPTV. And now we are increasingly seeing OTT platforms, internet-based platforms, who distribute their content, or our content, via the open internet. And this is what is, so to speak, the status as of today. And looking at this audience and looking at this event, I would very much like to step deeper into the distribution of content for an in-car scenario. Looking at the status of cooperation between entertainment and automotive, I would say we are a little bit late, but not too late. I think there is interesting and important and even necessary technology coming up. So we are all aware of 5G mobile networks. But not only that, we also are looking or have to look at the technology inside the cars. So we're talking about the displays, we're talking about the user interfaces, we're talking about processor speed and storage capacity in car. And we got the feeling that now is a very good point of time to step into discussions. We see a lot of potential and would like to move ahead.
And talking about new technologies, delivering in new ways, Robert, you come from the kind of technology side enabling these services. Is it easy to get brands like ProSieben into car now?
Now that's an interesting question. I'm sitting here realizing I'm with 4 companies that everybody knows, and probably no one has heard of the company I work for, Access. So
until now.
Until now, hopefully, but hopefully that's the first thing. So Access is a software company. Our European HQ is just outside Dusseldorf in Oberhausen. We have a long history of providing connected services, connected applications through consumer electronics and into vehicles. So one of our technology pieces is an embedded web browser. So you would be surprised how many web browsers there are in cars, even though you never know they're there. So we have software in something like 30 million cars. So we have a little bit of experience of connecting standards-based technologies to the internet. Which led us to think that it makes sense to build a platform on which you can provide these services. And then we realized it's great having a platform, but you have no content. Hence, the reason we need to be talking to people like these guys here, which is why we're really excited that we recently made an announcement with Viacom, for example, to partner with the first automotive software platform to be known as an official media platform in Germany. So there's lots and lots of pieces. And I think the biggest thing that we've learned is the automotive industry doesn't understand, maybe except for Scott, because he comes from that background, they don't understand the complexity of getting content into the car. If something's free to air through an aerial, doesn't mean it's free to air over OTT into a car. And I think that's the hurdle that we're all needing to solve as an industry.
Yeah, and Peter, data is obviously a key part of getting that content into the car. You're a telco, not only do you deliver data, but also video. Where do you see a company like yours fitting into connected cars?
Well, Hayley, first of all, thanks for the invitation. It's actually, as far as I can recall, the first time that we as DT sit here with and in public with the automotive industry, especially in a context like this. These 2 guys, we know each other quite well. We're just a huge MIP trade show at Cannes, met in Munich for another conference. They tried to get our money. We tried to get the best of the content. So it's a long-standing relationship. We were eager to meet the 2 of you and also the audience, because what we see at this point is, and I've been building the content business for DT for the last 20 years. It's now sort of a roughly 1.5 to 2 billion euro business per annum, including 3.5 million subscribers for the Magenta TV. What we see is we have some, in terms of distribution, some sort of traditional models like linear and pay TV and transactional VOD, where you sort of rent a movie for 48 hours. And then phase 2 has started like a couple of years ago, which is the Netflixes, the Amazons, the Disney streaming services to come. We also went into producing our own content. That's one part of the answer to your questions. So we just announced two fictional series we're going to produce. That's a complete new business for a telco, actually. We are also very close with our friends from Orange. I just carefully listened to the presentation on 5G. So all of the telcos are basically searching for new opportunities for distribution. We had a trial with a kids product a couple of years ago where we generated content on our own, sort of individual content for car usage. I can speak about that a little bit later. So we think that video is one of the key applications and use cases in car, but we still experiment and happy to share our insights with you guys, but also want to learn more about what's the
I think
future.
that would be super interesting, Peter, to talk a little bit about what you've done previously. I know there's huge experimentation, but huge innovation, and you guys are at the kind of forefront of some of that. Stefan, let's bring MTV and Nickelodeon and all those superb other brands into the conversation. Your CEO, Robert Bakish, got up last week at Mobile World Congress in, I think it was in Los Angeles, and said, in-car is one of those next big opportunities for content distributors. Can you tell us a little bit about where Viacom see the space?
So first of all, thanks for having me. And I'm here with the role for Viacom, and I'm also here as a father, and because I'm serving the kids and family channels for GSA and Nickelodeon. This also I think is a topic for in-car entertainment. So everyone who has kids knows this very well. Yeah, well, Bob Bakish, I think he's definitely right when he said this is the next opportunity in-car entertainment, because it already exists. So there is a kind of in-car entertainment already, but everyone thinks, okay, it comes from the radio, and then we will have screens for every members in the car. But if you think a little more into the future, what would happen if all these in-car entertainment systems would be interactive? Because people know each other when they sit together in a car. This would change the way in developing content. And this is, I think, what Bob meant when he spoke about this will be the future. Imagine what would happen to a car if the screens would turn not to look like tablets, but if your window, for example, starts to be half transparent, and you can also implement new technologies in this all changes the thinking about how we should develop content, and this is what Viacom stands for, with MTV, Comedy Central, and Nickelodeon in Germany, and many more channels, and this means content.
Okay, so I think we all agree, which is unfortunate for a panel, but at this stage, that content is really important in the future in cars. I'd like to now move on and talk about the type of content that we're going to see, or we are seeing, because I know there's some big elephants in the room, if that's a term that travels well internationally, with the internet tech giants and what they're doing. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on how you think content needs to appear in the car. Is it existing services that we have with our pay TV providers at home today, or is it brand new, curated, bespoke experiences by some of the leading distributors out there? Scott, perhaps you should comment on what you think your consumers in car want.
Well, it's definitely something that I've had a lot of thought about, you know, having different meetings in different countries. Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting having, depending upon the country that you're in, and also what the media company owns in terms of assets, is the kind of conversation goes in a number of different ways. So looking at what, for example, Tesla announced recently, of course, they basically implemented Netflix in the vehicle, and I think it looks very, very interesting. But I think that certainly works when you have that size of a screen, especially when you're sitting around waiting for your vehicle to be fueled up with energy. Now, do I believe that that's the end-all, be-all of everything that we should do? Absolutely not. So I think, in a way, content needs to be delivered in a slightly different way, whereas I think a lot of media owners have lots of assets that could be sliced up and delivered in perhaps different ways. So it could be actually tailored for, as I said before, a commute, to make sure that I can actually listen to the content, for example, during my drive and get out of the vehicle and be happy with that. Same thing with, we were one of the first, I think, to announce a number of years ago a relationship with Axel Springer, where we brought in Die Welt into the vehicle, and they were actually recording some of the highlights of the newspaper that day every morning and for drive time, so that they could, in effect, make the newspaper come alive in vehicle because they were not present in the vehicle. And so I think that the kind of in-car experience today offers a lot of opportunity for brands to bring in experiences that are typically not necessarily consumed in the vehicle. So in a way, it's kind of like an interesting brand extension.
Yeah.
Now, we again talked about audio content. We clearly games and a lot of games have come up recently where trying to actually allow the driver and passenger participate in a similar game.
Yeah.
So naturally, we're very, very concerned about driver distraction, but there are some interesting things that we've seen that do not necessarily distract, but actually allow the driver to participate, for example, with their children in the back.
Yeah, I must admit at lunch I was having some conversations with some of the guys from the insurance stream, and they were very much worrying me about how much my insurance is going to go up if I had a better entertainment system.
Yeah.
So, but we'll worry about that at a later
We'll worry about
stage.
that at a later stage. I mean, I think the question here is, around, I'm not just focused on video.
Yeah.
So I think video has opportunity in the vehicle for sure.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's probably a lot of content based on some of the conversations that we've had that existed in video, in kind of traditional video format, that actually could be made just for audio content.
Yeah, so
Right.
curation, and I think looking to the car of the future, especially autonomous, there's something to be said around making the most of the moving vehicle, augmented reality, virtual reality, which I know, Stefan, you've got some experience with. But before we talk about that, let's talk about what we can deliver today. And I know we talk about local content being hugely important. I mean, cars are global phenomenons, and it's hard to do things globally. So how do kind of local players, how important are they, and how can you provide locally?
Well, we at ProSiebenSat.1, we believe it's really important to have a look at the customer and the customer demand. So being a media and entertainment company who's running live TV stations, we do believe that live TV also has an importance in car, especially if you look at news, if you look at sports, if you look at event-based television, where people are really eager and want to see that event and want to be updated. On the other hand, we are facing a situation where we may not have best coverage everywhere. We may also have a situation where customers may want long-form content for a long travel, for a long journey. So that would be a good idea to have video on demand, which is somehow locally stored in the car.
Yeah.
So we definitely believe it will be a mixture, and we think it's a good idea to really look into the customer journey, the customer demand, and what the customer really want. What we see as of today is that some customers, as of today, show us their behavior, and maybe we just have to look, to observe, and to adopt. The other day, I sat in a taxi, and the guy had a tablet computer stuck on the dashboard with double-sided tape. So
Whatever works, right?
and he was watching TV. So obviously, this person. And it was a pretty new German premium car. So this guy had found a solution for his demand, watching television in the car, but it was not in our control and not in the control of the car manufacturer, and probably not a good business case behind it.
Yeah, and we're potentially
Maybe just
missing
for
out.
Peter, because he was consuming a lot of data. So, but my key point is we are in a pioneering field, and we will be developing a new business, and therefore it's really key to look at the customer's demand and the customer journey.
And does it matter, Robert, whether you're delivering VOD services, video on demand services, or linear feeds? Are you being asked by your customers to deliver both, or is there a kind of obvious request for one or the other? Because free TV, linear consumption, is still very important in different territories, and being able to deliver that is still of huge importance in certain markets.
Yeah, we're seeing the whole spectrum. I think the point is, as we're saying, it's early in the industry. People are trying to understand where video can fit. When will it be allowed in the front of the car, or is it only rear seat or mobile consumption? Back to the habits of existing people, what do? They'll download something onto a tablet or take a DVD player, and they'll consume it in the car. So in that sense, this isn't new. What's new is the fact it's connected, potentially interactive, and so on. So live TV, I think, is a definite draw, especially going back to local markets. You know, as you may tell from my accent, I'm from the UK, so I'm going to watch BBC, ITV, Channel 4 from the UK. German people want to watch ProSieben, Sat.1, ARD, ZDF, and so on. So that will be huge, but very, very much market-driven. And then back to your elephants, there will be people that will think that Netflix and Amazon Prime are all they need. So I still think we're at that phase where people are trying to understand. And then we come to the content providers, because when we all watch a program now, we tend to sit down in front of the TV for the duration of the program. When you're in a car, you're in the car for the duration of the journey. So are there innovative ways to cut the content so that maybe you have a cliffhanger every 5 minutes, so that when you stop, you get a cliffhanger, you want to watch it next time you're in the vehicle? I think the opportunities are huge, and no one has the answers at the moment, which is exciting.
Peter, your company is what I would call an aggregator of all those incredible brands and local services, and you're used to appealing to changing consumer behavior, whether it's delivering via the internet or delivering on across mobile devices. And you have Magenta TV, which you may want to tell us a little bit about, but because there's potential for that to come into the in-car environment as a kind of full service that's there and ready. Do you see that as being kind of prominent in-car, bringing your own paid television services?
Well, I think we basically have three contributions to make to that game. One is, as we asked earlier, that one is the connectivity. You know that we invested heavily, as many other parties on the global frame, in 5G. The annual investment in connectivity is around 5 billion per year, and we want to have 99% of all households ready for 5G in 2025, and in about 3 years, 99% ready for 100 megabits. So that's sort of our service number one. Second is Magenta TV, OTT, what's called over the top. You don't need access for that. And that is basically our own sort of your carry your own device, carry your own product with more than 75 channels, our own series, our own video on demand, and so forth. I think alluded to the experiment that we followed up early on, like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And actually, many things have changed. Our assumption would be that there's a general pattern of consumption for media. For example, it's like 3 hours of TV in general for an adult per day. And if you take, like, let's say, like 1 hour of daily commuting, just on average, just as an assumption, then this adds significant time on top. Now, we assume that people will basically sort of transfer their pattern of consumption into the car, and then you have some categories that are sort of defenders, like podcasts, audiobooks, and the Spotifys. And those are probably targeted by anything that's like video, VR, and gaming, so things that need further attention. Is there a business model? That's something else, but we will be prepared. We will integrate all these new categories in our Bring Your Own Device product.
Right, so far we've got curated content, local content, existing third-party services. That's a big challenge, isn't it, for car manufacturers to think about entertaining all those services?
It's a lot.
I'm looking at you,
no,
Scott,
I know,
because
I'm
you're the one that's going to have
industry.
to kind of
Yes.
facilitate this.
I will get my toolkit out and
Yeah.
start doing that. But no, I think one of the things that you touched on is the business model, the commercial side of it, and been really trying to think about, I mean, ultimately this has to be a win-win situation, right? Because otherwise it doesn't work. And so one of the things that we've been thinking about is, you know, put yourself in the shoes of someone who commutes to and from work during the week, and then all of a sudden they decide, hey, I'm actually going to go on a road trip with my family. The type of content that you're probably going to want to consume during your road trip is going to be pretty different than what you're used to consuming during your daily commute. That opens up some really interesting potential. And what we've started to have conversations with the industry about is to think about, well, hey, is there different on-demand, a la carte opportunities, whereas I don't think, like for me, I'm currently running, I think, 4 or 5 different subscriptions that I pay per month to different providers for different types of content. And I don't think I want another one. So how do we get around that? It's really about, in a way, having a premium for desperate, I need content while I'm going on this road trip. I don't have a Spotify subscription, but maybe I actually want it for the week. Maybe I actually want to be able to, I don't know, consume content from my favorite newspaper because some issue happened in the world, and I actually want to get something on demand. So in a way, there is a clear opportunity here, I think, to generate revenue that can help offset some of the costs of handling all of this content, but also, I think, potentially bring in different types of content that actually has a value associated to it. Because one of the things that I've learned from my days in content is content ultimately is not free. It has to be paid for in some way, shape, or form. And so if we're looking to the OEMs, to us, to pay for all of that, that's just not going to work. If we may be able to offer some package subscriptions, but there will be things that will fall outside of that.
Yeah.
And that's where I think some of these interesting business models may make sense.
Okay, well, I think that leads us nicely to talk about money and these new revenue
Thought I would
streams.
help you with that.
And we've got such an interesting dynamic as well, because the content providers and the telcos are ultimately going to want to make some revenue somewhere along the line. That's how the world goes round. Stefan, in the content industry, we have lots of fun and complicated mechanisms for licensing our content. If you're an aeroplane, you're different model to what you are if I was licensing to a telco. How do you see in-car when it comes to licensing? Are we going to see new models, or are we going to try and do some of the same ones that we have already today?
I think it depends a little bit on how the in-car entertainment systems will develop. Once they bring something completely new, then there will be a new business model. Otherwise, it will be connected to the existing models, which means it's a licensing business. So maybe some of the in-car entertainment systems are going to be their own platforms or own providers for content, then they will be our customers. But we believe that the in-car entertainment systems will bring some new features to how you will perceive content. So that's the reason why we are having a cooperation with these guys from Access, because in the end, again, it's a question of content and how you receive it and how you deal with it. Once it is different to what you can get on your tablet or on your mobile phone or at home with a big TV, so then it will be a different licensing model. And it's not comparable to a licensing model for planes, for example, because this is always, you know exactly how long your journey is. Traveling by car is always different. You have short distance, middle distance, long distance. You travel alone, you travel with your family. So this all makes the difference.
So doing something different is what you're saying is going to make a better case for there being an exchange of revenue. And an example of that would be curated content tailored to the length of the journey.
Definitely. As long as the content is the same, we will use the same licensing models. Yeah. This is what we already do. We are licensing our streams or VOD content, video on demand, so single movies or series.
Yeah, and Peter, similar sort of opinion from you. I've got a very polite panel. I want someone to say, we will not pay, or we will change our business model.
Well, I think there's potential maybe for two thoughts. One is the current revival of the AVOD, the advertising video on demand.
Yeah. A big theme in the content world at the moment. Yeah.
I would have expected that Stefan talks about because he has a nice...
He's got time to plug it.
He has a nice subsidiary
called
Pluto, and Pluto is sort of reviving that model currently in the US. So that's one idea, because it's very difficult to sell additional sort of products if people are already fully equipped, and that could result in another thought, maybe that if you observe the growth rate of Netflix, for example, it has basically stopped in the US. They're basically growing international, primarily in the Far East and India. And Disney will experience probably the same life cycle of the same sort of penetration curve in the next month and years.
Disney launching their
Disney Plus,
international
the new
Netflix
VOD
equivalent.
service, yeah.
Don't let them hear me say that, but
Um,
don't let them hear me say that it's a Netflix equivalent, but yeah,
Oh, no, it's
essentially,
equivalent.
yeah.
No, it's a different target group. So it's very difficult to come up with additional streaming services and to get another $5 or $10 per month. Maybe one idea that could be supported is to have some sort of like a full mobile, total mobile subscription that has sort of a best of or a subset of different categories, and that might appeal to the ones that are losing sort of steam, because you don't need all the content that you have if you're not a subscriber yet. But if you want to have like a sort of a small entry level, and then you just pay $9.95, and then you have, let's say, 10% of the Spotify or a subset of Disney or HBO or whatever you need, and also local content. And that's what we see, that there's an additional revenue stream also for content that is somehow affiliated with maybe your trip or any services. Maybe it's rather a service than content. So I see some leeway for new subscriptions, but not in the traditional way.
Yeah, okay. So potential to do deals, different types of bundling deals, take some revenue. That's very complicated, Robert, isn't it? To go out to all these different content providers and strike deals. I guess
Absolutely.
that's what a company like Access are trying to take the pain away.
It's what we're trying to do, and it's not the simplest thing you can do in the world. But yeah, there's so many agreements, so many things that need to be done, and it's regional and it's country and even within country sometimes, which I guess Deutsche Telekom would also know. But once you have a service, then it comes down almost to what Scott was saying as well. What are people prepared to pay for? I think what we're seeing is, everybody wants a low monthly subscription because it's typically an add-on or a subset. But the revenue opportunities will come potentially around advertising. They'll come potentially around that on demand. I mean, the holiday is the great example, as Scott's already given. That's a sudden need for content, and you will pay a premium. So instead of maybe getting, the €10 a month that you really wanted, maybe someone will pay 25 for 2 weeks because you've got 4 kids in the back of the car and they're going to be screaming, and you've got a 1,000-mile road trip. That's where almost the content model may change. You may have this drip feed of content that's free or close to it, but you're going to see these spikes, and actually overall the revenue will be the same. And I think that's the key thing, because again, I echo Scott's point, you can't put all the content costs on the car OEMs. If that's the case, they're not going to invest billions in content when they don't know the customers will pay for it yet. So the minimum guarantees is always another interesting challenge that the content industry's used to. So I think we will certainly see models changing over time to react to the way that the content is consumed.
I just, the thing that concerns me at the moment about the industry, the industry that I'm in now, the auto industry, is that it is fundamentally made up of people who do not understand this world, right? And the challenge with that means that there are business models or thinking around how you're going to deliver something and the kind of money that you're going to make from it and the kind of expectations that customers will have, and it doesn't actually pan out, because I think I have absolutely no issues being completely brutally honest here, is another subscription, unless there is some unique proposition that the vehicle offers, then why should I as a customer spend more money for the same thing that I'm already getting on my smartphone probably through another subscription in the car? It absolutely makes zero sense. So that's where, from my perspective, it's one of the reasons why I'm spending so much time meeting with different media companies in different countries here in Europe, so that I can understand, for example, what is a customer in Spain willing to do, because it would be very different than the conversation I had with a media company in Stockholm recently. Because the customer is different, what they're willing to pay for is different, the market is different. And so if we're going to really be successful in this space and actually offer something unique, and we have to partner up with the media companies, and the content owners to actually make sure that we're delivering what is unique and different than what someone can actually get in their house or on their smartphone or wherever. Otherwise, what is the bloody point, right? Because it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just delivering somebody another version of. I think when I read the Netflix or the Tesla stuff, it basically said everything was great. Tesla, the Netflix implementation was great, but the Spotify implementation wasn't very good because it didn't have any relationship to the Spotify implementation. None of your preferences, none of your stuff carried over into the in-car implementation. Well, that's just stupid, right? Why do I want to recreate the wheel in the vehicle when I actually spent a lot of time creating all my playlists? I would never give up my Spotify Spotify payment because I have so many playlists.
Same.
Yeah,
Same.
right?
Yeah.
But that mentality of that reality check isn't necessarily the most popular thing to talk about when everyone's trying to think, wow, content is the... It's like data was the new oil, content is the new, proposition for us. Hey.
Well, let's go on and talk about our friends at Apple and Google and the solutions that they're already delivering to car manufacturers, albeit audio. At the moment, Stephen, the chairman, in his opening remarks, talked about this anxiety that some of the car manufacturers have about letting these platforms come on board and take over their potential relationship with the consumer. Joachim, do you see car as another device or a platform that needs integrating with and a tailored experience?
I think it's a tailored approach, because, as I said earlier, I think it would be a mixture. The people in a car demand a mixture of linear content and recorded content, but also there is more content relevant. Maybe there is some geo-located content which informs you about any attractions where you drive by. Maybe there is, speaking of advertising, maybe there is opportunities in advertising when you pass an opportunity where you can shop for something, or when there is whatever kind of commercial attraction which might be relevant to the audience in car. This could be a complete new business case and business opportunity for a number of parties. Us being a private television network, of course, we are very interested and we are looking into these opportunities. So we would definitely look into discussions with the automotive industry and people supporting finding, let's say, new use cases, and build a tailor-made experience. To give you maybe two examples, we have done one deal with a hotel chain in the Middle East. Yeah. That's a pretty small segment, but this company just wanted our German language television programs for the German guests. And we did another deal with a cruise ship line for their cruise ships, again for German television. And we combined this with AVOD content and video on demand services. So as we're pioneering, as we're moving along, pretty much in the role of the people on this panel and in the audience, I think we need to have a dialogue, we need to have a discussion, and we have to look at the use case and develop the proposition. I think we would not be in a good shape if we just apply something that's already there.
Okay. We could talk about this all day, and I've realized I've completely missed the questions. I blame you guys. You should have been waving at me.
We
That's why
answered
I
all
sat
of
here.
them. They were
to
done.
make up for it, I'm going to promise you that these 5 are going to stay for at least 2 hours to take any of your questions on a one-to-one basis, which is going to be much better for you all anyway. So can you join me in thanking such an expert panel for talking about this today?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.